Hey, greetings. It's Polaris, man. How y'all feeling? This program is strictly the soul future. I've been out of action for a while, and I've been out of New York actually for an hour. And I know we was really getting, kind of deep. So I'm getting a lot of messages on the 646 Soul Future number. So thank you, Soul Future, for keeping up and even leaving messages of where you've been and we need the next knowledge and things of that nature. The Rubik's Cube thing is me being a little sarcastic here today, but at the same time serious. A Rubik's Cube, I've been dealing with a team of individuals who I've debated when I was in debate mode, and I thought, they got it then, but, they're back. These people are called the Pyramid Nation. I don't know, some of you heard of them. I know some of you have. I know some of you haven't. But they leave a lot of foul messages on Soul Future. They leave a lot of foul things and not threats of the nature of a street threat, but foul things as far as on Soul Future and on our knowledge and what I share. And it's all because of the debate we had on 125th Street with their so-called leader. I kind of, put him in his place. Let's just say it like that. When I was into that. Now they're back. They gathered some new knowledge and they want to, do this thing again. But I don't do this any longer for debate. So to them, I would just say the science of me putting up the Rubik's Cube, which was invented by a man called Aaron Rubik, or however you pronounce his name. It's a E-R-O-N name, Aaron Rubik. I do know he was a Hungarian architect, because when I got into the Rubik's Cube, I understood that he must be into third-dimensional geometry, because that's what a Rubik's Cube movement is. It's third-dimensional geometry. It's strictly mathematics and spatial movement related to how things move and relate to each other in space. And I just say in space because they will say in how things relate to each other in physical space. I never really understood physical with the word space. So I just say how things move and relate to each other in physical space. That's called spatial movement. And that's the corner to edge movement you're doing when you use a Rubik's Cube. And it's all based on mathematics, based on third-dimensional earthly mathematics. You must be a mathematician, a very superior mathematician to be good with the Rubik's Cube. Some mathematicians said that it can be got and have done it, have solved the Rubik's Cube in 20 moves. True mathematicians say it can be solved in 20 moves, and that's been proven. When I was in that study and in that mode of that third-dimensional geometry, which is I'm out of the third dimension, I'm more fourth dimensional with my thinking, I was able to complete a Rubik's Cube when I was in that vibe 4 to 5 separate times, maybe 6. I didn't get it right away, it was a lot of, what you would call, not failures because I was trying, but I wasn't getting it until I applied a certain kind of math and certain type of knowing ahead of time and patterns. It's about patterns and in dissimulation. You have to dissemble a Rubik's Cube first. You have to know how to enfeeble, then revamp, break down, then build back up. I was able, when I did it at my best, and again, these so-called mathematicians, they will tell you that most of them get them in 20 moves because they understand the geometry, and some of them say it can be solved in 20 moves if you're a mathematician. I am not ordained or what you call a graduated or a PhD or whatever certified mathematician by way of the educational system. But my best Rubik's Cube, when I got it together, this was in 2014, I did the Rubik's Cube in 67 moves. So I'm saying all that to say, Pyramid Nation, brothers, if you could bring one of your brothers here, or we can meet, and you can do a Rubik's Cube in 67 moves or less, I may grant you a debate. I might even start thinking that you're worthy of even sitting in the same intellectual space with me. It will be me moving downwards to come to a Rubik's Cube or a third dimensional piece. But if you can do that, I'll think about even giving you a personal number where we can get in touch. You might even be worth that, because then I'll know you at least know some kind of third dimensional geometry. So that's the science of why I put the Rubik's Cube up. I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but then again I am, because I am well above a third dimensional cube. And it still goes back to being a cube. It has nothing to do with space. A Rubik's Cube is strictly math. You can relate it in some ways to futuristical thinking. You have to have intuition. You have to kind of know. You have to space is patterns. But when you're dealing with the Rubik's Cube, remember you're dealing with third dimensional geometry and spatial movements. It's more or less the geometry and spatial. And they'll tell you that. If you do any research on a Rubik's Cube, you'll get to the third dimension. We here at Soul Future are fourth dimensional. If you understood what SF was, if you had another eye to look at the SF in Soul Future, you understand that? You know that we're Swati. You've been taught that it's just a German thing called swastika. But there were black Germans. You have to do your research. There were black Germans, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into Ben Franklin, and we're going to get into incubator babies, and we're going to get into a question that I had about someone doing their research and saying, when did Europeans or so-called white people populate the earth? And I'm not going to get into allegedly, but I'm not going to answer it fully. I'm going to just give you information on that and tell you, yeah, that's I found those writings. I understand those findings that you're talking about. And we can go ahead and move, and we can get into that. So the SF, if you put it together and think of the swastika, it's the chiming, it's the turning of the primordial waters that got everything started. And when you turn and turn and turn, when you understand Tesla coils, and when you understand rotating a negative and a positive in two separate directions, going in two separate directions, and you understand the spark of life, you understand where electricity comes from, where the word let there be light comes from in the Bible, you start understanding that this didn't mean let there be light. It was speaking to you about technology and booting up the earth with free energy. And this can only work on a flat earth. And those are some of the mysteries behind why they try to debunk or flat earthers. Because when you're dealing with flat earth cosmology, as all of our ancients did, and all of their cosmology adds up. Different names and words, but it's the same flat earth cosmology. There's a lot of models, Vedic cosmology. I don't want to get into all of the names, but there's different cosmologies that our ancient ancestors trusted in flat earth, and how they calculated to be able to give up free energy. You can't get free energy on a globe, so people will definitely want to keep you in the oil and coal industry, to where that's how you got to get, certain privileges in civilization as power. We're speaking of energetic things. We're speaking of laboratory things, negative and positive. We're speaking of alchemists, transfigurations, which we're speaking of how Tesla got his coils. He couldn't do it without putting a negative and a positive together. And once they got a negative and power and positive together, then they understood, let there be light, there can be power. There can be no power without a negative charge and a positive charge have to come together and form what you call the Tesla coils, spinning in two separate directions. And then you get power. So in your Bible, they'll tell you God is what? All powerful. But you're looking at it as a being. The Bible is really teaching you a science that if you can't decode, you would take the Adam and Eve stories and all of that stuff to let there be light. It'll go past you. That the Bible is giving you flat earth and free energy. If you understood it or overstood it, better yet. So, if God is all powerful, then God is God and the devil, meaning all they took was this alchemy of a scientist, someone looking at a positive pole and a negative pole. He's not looking at it as a God and a devil, positive pole. And he knew that these two poles had to come together. These two charges, negative and positive, had to come together to create power. That's God-like thinking. That's why God is all powerful, because he has to be the negative and the positive. Thus, your God, if you wanted to, go with that, which is true, your God has to be God and the devil. There's no way for God to be all powerful. And I'll give you an example. If God created all things, there's nothing that exists unless God created it. I would have to tell you then evil exists. Evil exists, so God must have created evil. He must have control over evil, so he must be evil. If he created all things and evil is in creation, then you are what you create. How could you be the son of God? How could you be your mother's child if you didn't come from your mother? You're mapped out of your mother and everything she was. Had your mother been a heavy drinker, had she been on crack, whatever she ate bad, poison, it would have poisoned you. You would be one with that. Now, if you want to look at it the way I'm sharing with you, take away a character called God, a man in heaven, and look at energies. Just look at energies. And then you say there was two energies that existed from polarity, from a split, from even coming into existence. It had to be a split. This would be your science of it had to be a split. This would be your anything coming into existence from 0.0 degree access from the vortex of the spinning and the chiming of the primal waters. If you imagine spinning your finger in a glass of water, your index, and you just keep spinning it and spinning it and spinning it and spinning it, you'll create a vortex. And everything that came out of that vortex, subatomic particles and things of that nature, formed into one mass. And out of that hole, it formed into one mass. But when you put your index in a glass of water and keep circling and circling, they didn't get a spark. Then you just try to hurry up and reverse your circle and go back the other way. That's when they got a spark. In other words, they understood that we had to rotate two things opposite of each other. You understand what I'm saying? The negative and positive had to be rotated opposite of each other, but spinning. And then you'll get a spark. So you'll hear that a goddess called Sophia gave you the spark of life. Because these were, I would trust, oracles doing this kind of work, or some type of divine feminine. Because everything was born through that cone, through that hole, everything came out. Particles, subatomic particles, what you would call ions, and things of that nature. And this stuff had to form. It had to form, and once it formed in a small mass, it became synergy. Okay? These things became synergy. These atoms formed in a certain type of mass. And they became what we would call synergy. And it was subatomic particles. So by the time they spring out into the earth, we get energy. We get atomic energy. Atomic energy, all the atoms combined would be synergy. Synergy would be everything that came out of that stirring, came out of that vortex, that cone. And if you can imagine a vortex, you're spinning your finger around that water. Soon it will sud up. It will sud. You know, the salt water, the seas, when you see it, and they clash together, and then you get a sud. So when they was turning and turning and turning, if you look at your weather forecast, you'll see that spin, that spiral, everything. So that's how the elements came out into existence. They came out in a spiral, not horizontal. like you see our periodic table today. No, the elements came out from that swirl, from that chiming, from the spinning of the primordial waters. And that created a vortex. Subatomic particles and things of that nature, ions and stuff came out. Then they formed and hardened. These atomic particles, they formed and hardened into atomic, into what we would call synergy first, which is the gathering of all of those elements working together, doing what they do at they top potent. And when they all do what they do and come together, that's called synergy. Into center mass. E equals mc squared. Energy equals mc squared. E equals mc. Energy equals mass. All of that mass was really synergy. But as it being called atomic, it would get atomic energy out of it, and thus that's how the elements are born and formed. So they're coming out spiral. There's no straight lines in the universe. Everything is spiral. Thus, this is the science of being spiritual or spirit. Those things exist in Bibles and pantheisms and Vedas about being spiritual, about seeing a ghost and all that. This myths that I'm talking to you about, this foaming, it's nothing solid here. It's nothing solid here until one thing solidified and became one. All coming out of this hole, all coming out of this vortex, that spinning vortex that you're talking about. And when you spin your finger real fast, or you spin like a real fast, I'm going to give you some sciences. Spin your finger real fast, that index, turn it the other way, turn it one way, turn it the other way. You're going to get a foam in that vortex, right on the outside line of it. This is just science of ice cream coming on a cone. This is your science of your washing machine. This is your science of a blender. This is your science of Ezekiel's will. The will. You can't invent the will. You can't reinvent the will. You understand that picture your index being the North Pole, a pole. There's no South Pole. That's garbage. That one thing did the spinning and back and forth and back and forth. It was just two energies, but it was one pole spinning everything. And this pole that spins everything, all waters on the earth have to return back to this pole at the north, and then it goes up against this pole, and then it pushes back out. Just like when you see the sea, all the waters of the sea go up to the beach. All of that, you get a big wave. People got to run off the sand. It's coming. And then it pulls back. Why don't we get floods all the time? Why? I was under the impression at one time that it was the moon controlling the magnetic forces of the water. I thought I was under the teachings that the moon was controlling the tides of the water. No, and that was to hide this North Pole information. That was to hide this Santa Claus information. So that North Pole in stories and books and things of that nature, as our ancestors had to teach it back, becomes what? Mount Meru. That twirling, and if you twirling and twirling, you get your first ripple, your first ring, you get your second ring, your third ring. Well, the first ring would be Eden, would be the Garden of Eden. And remember that pole that comes out, that would be Mount Meru. This is your science of Santa Claus, a Christmas tree, because this thing created 7 rings. Thus Santa Claus brings gifts down a pole, he comes down a chimney hole, and he brings gifts. This is the science of all that. None of that existed. There is no Santa Claus. Y'all understand? We're talking about the barber pole. We're talking about this pole governs the earth. It governs everything. And it's in an icy place, Antarctica, North Pole, somewhere like that. So you have ice. The pole is in the ice, pole ice. It guards things. Science of the police I'm giving you right now. Why they guard, police, pole ice. This is Arctic information. This is information that you're not going to get in books. I can break life down to you in technology that you see just based on this information that I'm giving you. The twirling of the primordial waters, the vortex, spinning, spinning, spinning. What else am I giving you? I'm giving you the science of the cone head. I'm giving you the science of the pyramid. I'm giving you the science of the Ku Klux Klan hat. I'm giving you vortex information. Picture a vortex. That's a tornado. how it spins and spins and spins, and it takes everything in, and then it spits everything out. Everything came from this primordial whole, and that will be the science of the third eye. That will be the science of the all-seeing eye. The eye, when the eye gets open. Pineal gland, the pine cone. The pine cone is this, the vortex, and it spins, and you can pierce things with it. And this is your science of CERN and Elon Musk building a Hadron Collider. This is your science of CERN and Elon Musk building a Hadron Collider, something to spin and spin and spin that will pierce the ethers. So they say that's what it's doing. And when you see this spin in that vortex, think of it and think of the cat in the hat. Think of it and think of a witch's hat. Think of the North Pole and think of a witch's riding on a broom with that cone-shaped hat on. All this stuff is characters put in books so that you won't be able to get to the true knowledge. So the incubator babies, let me get to that because I don't want to waste too much time on that. I don't want to waste too much time on that. So I was asked about the population of European people. I don't want to be insulting. Truth is truth. I can't be insulting when I say certain genetical things. Again, we go over Benjamin Franklin. A lot of this knowledge that I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be able to check when you go to world fairs and stuff like that. But you can also observe. It's a book called Observations Concerning the Increase of Mankind. People of Countries by Benjamin Franklin. And in this book, Benjamin Franklin said that in the 1750s, that the white population was very, very small. This is not me saying this. This is I'm giving you some knowledge that I know and why I share what I share. I could get deeper, but I'm going to leave it for y'all to ask questions at So Future. This is a book. Observations concerning the increase of mankind. Remember, when you're dealing with your Bible and you're dealing with someone saying God breathed into man his breath of life and man became a living soul. God and them was talking at first and God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. And then God breathed into this man and this man became a living soul. I'm finding out today that they're removing those Bibles where it said that and that and not giving you that no more. But original King James versions, you look into Genesis, into the creation story of man, and you will see that God was in heaven, and they talk about, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. And God breathed into this man his breath of life, and this man became a living soul, said nothing about a human being. That's one group of people. You can go in Genesis 5 later on and read something about male and female, and here's a new word, created them both. Male and female, he created them both. Here's a creation. If there is a God, and we're going with this story, and he's eternal, and God breathed into a certain people his breath of life, and these people became what God was, or just became a living soul. He's not using the word creations right there. You have to be mapped out of that breath. You come that's deeper than that, but I'm just giving y'all this. If y'all want to believe this. So I'm saying all of this to say, when you're dealing with the Human Genome Project, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with what was created. You're dealing with later on male and female, because in the Bible, when God was doing this, he was talking about man. He said, and man became, not mankind, not a male became, man became. And then you're later on dealing with that man got a woman. Then they're going to switch atoms, but don't worry about that. I'll get to that when y'all ask the right questions. So we're dealing with man, and God said it's not right for the man to be alone. Let's make him a helper. And she was called woman, right? And that's how you fertilize that, and that's how you procreate, man and woman. Now when you get to the creation in Genesis 5, the creatures, I'm not a creature. When God did something with me, he breathed in his breath, I became a living soul. Why the hell would I call myself a human being? I'm one with soul. the creatures or the created people don't have souls. They could not procreate. So it was a long project going on, and when time you see Adam in the garden, that is not you. That's that person that was being created. And then it says, go ye and multiply. They had to see if they can, have sex yet, because that race, that, let's just be real, that pale or Caucasus Asian race came a lot late. They were here, but they couldn't really procreate. They had a problem procreating. So they gave us Brady Bunches and Partridge Families and all that kind of shit on TV, and families like they had big families. They couldn't procreate. So that leads us up to what we're talking about with incubator babies. In the 1750s, in those 1750s, it was recorded, you can look this up, that there was a very low count in the population of European people, period, the white man or whatever. That's just recorded. By the 1800s, they were popping up all over the place. I'm giving you right now the science of the Cabbage Patch Kids. I'm giving you right now the science of incubator babies, test tube babies. More creations, because they were breaking down again. They can't procreate. Other races are dominant. So in the 1700s, you get a bunch of orphan homes built all around America, ready to house thousands and thousands of children. And if you look up and do your research and look up orphan trains, there will be a history in America where orphan trains was dropping off thousands of children by the load all around the country. They even had this, if you look it up, on ancient stamps. They had Cabbage Patch Kids babies on stamps. While they were going through this, there was a lot of deformalities, and thus I'm giving you the science of the hills have eyes, or the deformated people up in the hills, or what we would call the hillbillies, toothless people and raggedy, and they don't wash. They don't get, they live up in the mountains. We call them hillbillies, but there's some filthy people. This is their lineage. This is where they come from. And we can go back to the original ones who was here that before they started coming up with test tube babies and incubator babies and procreating Frankensteins and all of that. This is not me saying it. This is that race. They can trace themselves back to dead mountains called Caucasus Mountains, or Caucasian, the Caucasus Mountains, which they are Caucasians. Asian word is in there. The Asians, white people, Europeans, that's family. They're trying to make you think that the German family was a white family. You'll understand the word Swati when you see that it was a lot of dark people coming from Germany. Even Ben Franklin mentioned this in his book. There were a lot of Swatis coming. Swati meant studiers of the swastika. What's not the swastika, because they give it to you from Hitler and make you think it's something bad, because that turning generates things. That's also the science of a fan that can generate air just by those propellers. Science of your helicopter that's spinning. It gives you a thing called free energy where you won't need no goddamn electric bill. So a lot of things are being hidden from you. So a lot of, if you go back to the 1750s, and because we saying male and female, we begin to bring different types of animal genetics into laboratories. We bring all kind of animal genetics into laboratories, and where could you get a lot of animals from? Africa. So Africa was used as a laboratory where they can go get infinite amount of animals to start testing. This is why they say all civilization came out of Africa. Yes, civilization. We don't come from civilization. We come from that breath of life, of free world, beyond their civilizations. We come from behind that third dimensional wall. We come from another ring. We come from Eden. We are people of soul that were here naturally. When you're dealing with putting something in a petri dish, yes, you're going to be taught all life starts in the water. Let me give you all a deep science that even grown people was a little bit messed up with. Let me give you all a little science that grown people was even messed up with. All life started in the water. No. A lot of life started generating in what I would call tropical atmospheres. Heated tropical, so things can cook. The elements had to cook. That's why they come out. The elements come out in lumps, like they were baked, like it was a cake baked. You pull back from the elements, and then you get lumps. silver, lumps of silver, lumps of the, and then they're, excuse me, somebody keep going, in lumps, and then they're distributed, and that was another thing. But let me not get off track. They had postcards depicting babies of Cabbage Patches, and also a lot of times orphan children. All right, they had you can look up ancient cloning factories. I'm gonna just give you all some stuff to look at. Look up ancient cloning factories or test tube babies. White people were mass produced in the 1800s. In the 1800s, Farrakhan teaches a science called Yakub, genetically crafted evil or the devil. That's who the NOI called the white man, and he'll go through this long process about a genetical grafting of a man, and he became this. Well, you know, I don't want to relate the two projects, but you want to do your homework on that question you asked me, where did white people come from? And I can take you back to the Caucasus Mountains, and when you say all life started in water, think of a petri dish. I just showed you come from everything that was made up from that primordial spit, from that spiral, which you get the word spiritual. It can't stop spinning. It's ritualistically spinning. Spiral, spiritual, a ritual. Ritual is not like ritual praying to no goddamn God. Something that's done ritualistically. Back when you do something all day, like work, you go to work religiously. Did your job have any goddamn thing to do with heaven or God? No. So how you go to work religiously? So we're talking about a ritual is something that's being done repeatedly or ritualistically over and over and over and over again. And that was on a spiral turn. And those rings. I always tell people to think of a lake and throw a rock in the center. The first hole will be Eden. The second ring, third ring, fourth ring. These are etheric walls. This is a gas. This is etheric walls that they're trying to penetrate to go to those other sides. And it goes outwards. And they got you looking up. And they want to be the Lord of these rings. They want to put a God in each of these rings. This is your science of the zodiac, Ezekiel's will, and things of that nature. So when you're dealing with life starting in water, they're telling you about their Human Genome Project. Now, if I just went over Genesis with you, and then Genesis is a book of so-called beginning, or the genes of Isis, and it's teaching you about a genealogy, we know we're on track. Something's going on. But by the time you get ATOM, the atoms that I'm talking about that form, you get them in the form of a man called ADAM, Adam. And if you want to break that down, you just look at the way God brought him in and said, here, Adam, what you name things. Here's the East River. Here's the Gideon River. Here's this river where the gold is found. And he walked Adam around and said, whatever you name him. You telling me this man ended up in a garden naked and didn't know nothing? What kind of God taught him? God walked with this man. He came right out of God. God walked with Adam first, and then this man ended up in the garden naked. It's a different Adam. They put the created man in the garden naked to watch him. But they told you about a man that God breathed into and he became. Now this man over here is a creature or a human. And some people that had serpent knowledge that taught about the spiral, that taught the ancestors, that taught about how electricity goes, the electromagnetic universe, and taught about no straight lines in the universe, used maybe a serpent to the children, teaching them about the movement of the spiral, of the zigzag, not even the zigzag zig, of the snake, the centipede, that fault line type movement. Because in this, I'm skipping a lot because it's not this lesson, but lightning had to strike and crack open that hard rock that I was telling you when all them things formed. It had to be split now. And once you made a split, it wasn't from the one anymore. It was split. It was a polarity, because everything coming in the universe had to have was a cause and effect. An action had to be a reaction, unless you were just mixed and hardened and in that one center mass and into synergy. That's what we call a different place, some place where there's no movement, a stillness, until something hit it, cracked it open. This is the science of the lightning bolt. This is the science of Thor carrying a hammer, cracking something, cracking down on the earth and something splitting. This is the science of Adam and Eve, of The Bible is saying he went into Adam's side. This is a surgery. This is a splitting. And then came out with a woman. That's just, it didn't happen. It just teaching to you can get in there polarity. It's only a man now. And then polarity come out. We know this is not real because you can't go into a man whose DNA is made him a man. He couldn't be a woman. Couldn't get the DNA out of him to be a woman. If he's already a man and his DNA structure is patterned to be a man, where would you get a place to be a woman from? So it's talking to you about polarity. And if you don't know these things, man, welcome to Soul Future. Because I'll share these things with you. Yet, the European popped up on the earth big time in the 1700s. Okay, I'm going to talk about that too. I was just reminded of something else that we need to finish that I probably skipped over. I don't, in other words, if you're using animal genetics, right? The soul people, the living souls, us, we didn't know any kind of thing called sickness. We didn't know anything like that. And then we began mixing in with these beings. You understand? So I have to talk to you about a place called Tartaria, which was just written off an advanced civilization. If you and I, the word Tartaria is a word that was given to it, was given to this space, this place, by motion. In other words, if I think that bubbling up means, if I think stacking up means something being put on top of each other, and I go to a civilization and it looks like they all stacked up, like they don't got no room, I'll call them the stacking people. That's just what I'll call them. Tartarians were called Tartarus because the European viewed Tartaring or Tartary as something stacking up, something that goes on top of each other or something like that. So they just called them Tartarus. It's just like if you look at somebody and me and you have an explanation of whatever we think. In other words, they would we'll look at somebody, you and I, and we'll say that person moved like water. And then years later, that person gets written all in the books and Bibles saying, oh, he moves like water. His name is such and such. He flowed with the water. No, that's a saying we had, so we contributed to him. There's no place called, it's not the real name of it, but it was a advanced place, and it had a lot of structures already built. And I know at one time on the earth, there was very few Europeans. And then after the 1750s and all these Cabbage Patch children and incubator babies was dropped off, the European civilization, the population of the Europeans went up. Where these children were later took as they grew is what you would call, I would have to say allegedly, or this is what I think, or this is my theory on it. These children were grown to rule the world. They're your Illuminati children. They're your children that came from no mindset, no language, no parents. When they was dropped off, they didn't know who they were, where they come from. They just look at other whites and say, it must be my parents. So they get orphans. They were orphans, so they get adopted. And the people that adopted them were already people in the know that had something to do with their creation in those test tubes. Then they get given a life script. And then they, to me, allegedly, my theory is they later become what you would call the Jews, the writers and turners of history, and the people who started us back off and reset everything to a 1 AD, when we have 3,000 years or more before that. So we get invited into the year of their Lord, 1 AD, and this is when everything, Jesus, next Christianity, all of this stuff pops up. And they're being taught by someone. They're being led by secret beings of scientists that created them. A lot of movies out like this and stuff like that. And that's just my alleged theory. They're onto the earth and they're pointing fingers at everybody, taking everything, pillaging, robbing, raping. They're the Masons. They're the pirates. You got to get into medieval information because it's not what you think. When you're dealing with the horned people, it's not really what you think. You can go to Egypt and find horned people. You got to get into world fairs. Try to do all you can to get information on world fairs, because there were world fairs, the history of American world fairs, where they put these incubator babies on display to be sold. Because a fair is something families gonna, you're gonna come out to, well, people will come out to as couples, and then you can learn that you can buy a baby. You can have this baby dropped off to you, and this was populating the earth, because as Ben Franklin said, that everyone else, if you keep sending immigrants here from everywhere else, then everywhere else they will populate this place but us. You're gonna get this place. We can't populate it. So they, scheme was set up to me, and this is public information, that the European race, and because they were in, like I said, when you go back to Africa, you see all those animals. You can test things. Don't you know, when you see scientists now dealing with animals, don't you see in the background they have their animals all in cages, ready to go as test dummies? They might call them lab rats. You think they just got lab rats? They got monkeys. They show you dogs. They show you everything. They put in the ear on a mouse, from this, from that, from this. The Greeks put all of this in their cards. What you think the zodiac wheel is? What you think your zodiac is from? You think that's your astrology sign, and you dealing with animals? The zodiac sign kept a count of the rotation of what different animals they were using. So even if you go to the Greek, you have Greek cards with a man top, from his waist up will be a man's body, and then from the waist down will be a horse's body. That's them keeping their tab. That's how they kept notes, how they kept data. With it, for this type of man, we use horse. For this type of man, we use crocodile. You can see a man with a man body and a crocodile head. That didn't happen. They're just saying, for this man, we already use crocodile. We're going to use dog. We're going to see get it right, get them rotating, and get them going, get them up. But by using these animal genetics, this European, who we call the white man, your oppressor, he can now disease you because he has the animal in him. So he has to have sex. They have to go and they have to have sex and families with so-called carbon people. Ain't going to make it two races. We know what I'm saying. They have to have sex with you. So certain parts of slavery was just to kidnap the women and rape them and have babies. So they're mixed all into our genetics from rape, and from the women who give themselves to them, and from the men who go into the white woman. It's not just the women, it's a lot of men. You chase the white woman, you have babies, and you boost their genetic. You give their genetic a boost. And all they can do for you is train you. If you look at the Human Genome Project, I was going to ask you, if I just told you in Genesis that God breathed into man and man became a living soul, and God said, let us make man in our image, then why do we have a Human Genome Project? That's the moral of everything I'm saying. Why do we have a Human Genome Sapien Project, or Homo sapien, Homo erectus, Australopithecus? What are they trying to find? Didn't God create man, breathe into man? Yeah, but not them. They began at the creation, so they want to know where they come from. So they have to have an animal chart to trace back their genetics. They don't have a chart of, if they're spending billions of dollars on this project, and clearly they gave us a Bible that said God breathed into man his breath of life and man became, they know that's not them. They know they start in Genesis, male and female, from the word animal or animation. They were a projection of us, from us, like us. The Bible tells you that. They're mankind. Some of them was used heavy in the beginning with the animal called leper. So they have a disease called leprosy. They have brown spots, all of them. Some of them was used with Sasquatches and the humanoids. And so what do they have? They have hair on their back and chest and everything. Look at a gorilla. Look how hairy an animal is. So white people have fur. Excuse me, not hairy. White people have the fur of their animal. We have hair. That's not hair on European people. White or black. That's fur. And that white woman brushes her hair downward in a downward Down syndrome downstroke. And we had afros. Remember, you pick out to the air. Heat makes an afro. Heat rises things. Two different people. I'm not dealing with who's better. I'm showing you what they're showing you. You can't get mad at me. This is in your Bible. It says mankind. It says created people, male and female. And then it has man and woman. Then it goes back to a God breathing into somebody. So why the hell, if you believe in your Bible and God created man, why do you have a Human Genome Sapien Project? Because you need to find out where you came from. And like I said, Farrakhan has a theory called Yaku grafted the devil. There's a lot of other out there. You just got to go through a zodiac wheel, right? You put animals on your wheel. I just gave my people Soul Future the real wheel, the swastika, the turning of the free energy. Ain't no animals on that wheel. Y'all understand this? So why would there be a Human Genome Project? Because he has to find out who he was. And if you go back to ancient Anunnaki knowledge, it would teach you. The Anunnaki knowledge will teach you things that during this procreation of these beings who were procreated by people called Anunnaki to be slaves, Anki, which would be the lord of the land. He had a brother called Enlil. They came and they were to mine for gold. And they didn't want to do it anymore. So they created a Lulu Amelo, a primitive worker, to do it. And it took a long time. But by the time you see that Adam in the Bible standing up, that's them. That's now we can get them to work to go mine. So what's the first thing he took that Adam to do? Remember, they mixed everything in so good. But why would God be showing Adam a different rivers and saying, here, the gold there is fine? He's showing him that for the gold there. That's the gold you got to dig. So what's the oldest profession on earth? It's mining, man. It's mining. And what's golden? Silence is golden, because the slaves worked hard enough and shut up and did your goddamn job. They'll scratch you off a little extra piece of gold. You'll get a little piece of gold, you know, after work. Maybe you go trade and get you extra little quart of water or something, whatever you could buy, whatever you could use the gold for. But you get the gold because you were silent, you shut up, and you did what you're supposed to do. So that's why silence is golden. You understand? And when they go around the different checkpoints to see all the slaves, making sure you're doing your work, when you get around to these checkpoints, you better be doing your job. And if you're doing your job, then you ain't going to get no money, but they're going to use the Nike symbol. They're going to check a box. It's the science of that this slave was doing good. Now it's just advanced. You're on a work field. That's why they call it the work field. And at the end of 2 weeks, if you did good and you showed up, what do you get? A check. Come on, man. Welcome to Soul Future. There's nobody that's going to be able to share with you how I share with you. I am the best of examples. I am APEXX Polaris, the Grand High Exalted High Lord Executioner. I execute this shit so that you can get it and come out of a world of fantasies and characters and stuff like that, and that you want to call in and get more and say, APEXX, you touched on this, you touched on that. Something that you said interests me. I'm doing that on purpose. I can't fully give you this like that. But you got to remember what I tell you. The Anunnaki had a story of teaching you about they couldn't get it right. So a woman called Isis told her brothers, you know, I'll hold the egg. I'll do it so that your Adam and Eve project could procreate. That's why God told Adam and Eve, go ye now and multiply. What's God going to tell you and your wife to go fuck for? How do you multiply? You got to fuck to multiply. So that's the science that a man and a woman belong together. Not a man and a man, not a woman and a woman. Because from the beginning, you can't procreate without that. But that's how they were doing. They were going into one another, the creation, to see if they can do anything. This is why in ancient Egypt, you got Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And Isis is Osiris' husband, and she's also his sister. Y'all understand what I'm saying? So she carried she said, I'll carry the egg. I'm going to get into that. And a woman had to be involved for the procreation. Why do you think they traced their lineage back to a mitochondria DNA of a woman, a Lucy? They want to change it. They're not going to give you Egypt. They're not going to tell you Isis. But they are going to admit they traced their DNA or their genetical way back from an animal line back to a holder, a host. And that host had to be a female. Mitochondria DNA, that's their story. It has nothing to do with you spitting in no goddamn capsule and still raising your hand and asking this animal where the fuck you from. I'm telling you where you from. You're from the original spark of Sophia, of the mirror reflection. You were born out of something. Everything was born, so a woman has to be the host. And that's her story. They changed and sabotaged everything, and now you're reading history. His story. But pre-1 AD, pre-dynastic times, I can go back and tell you on this earth, was we worshiped that host. Not really worship, we honored that host, the goddess. It was about the goddess. And there was certain patriarch war in this peaceful place we called Havan or heaven, or a resting place we had, Edon. And the brothers didn't want to be under the women's rule anymore. Because it was the oracles that was doing everything. I'm not going to say they was into the stars like that, because we lived under what's called a vapor canopy. Vapor. Our ancestors did not look up and see what you see today, of stars, sun, and all that. They didn't. This is assimilation now. We're going to get into that. I'm going to leave those for questions to be asked. This Blu-ray or this blue sky, this is assimilation now. I'm not too sure we look up those stars are real. I'm not too sure. I know about a solar system that's been put in. We didn't deal, our ancient ancestor cosmology didn't deal with a solar system. Not at all. So I'll tell you what we dealt with, but in time, okay? Welcome to Soul Future. Y'all subscribe. Should be on your lower right, you'll see the blue Polaris. Ursa Minor, Ursa Major constellation. That's the bright star Polaris. If you have questions, certain one of you knows the number. If not, y'all can use the comment. People who are new, you can comment down below. And if you want to, you can leave a number or leave a question. Welcome to Soul Future. It's a mental mindset. And we're not a big channel. And that makes us big because Polaris, you'll read and look up and see it's the smallest star, but it's the brightest star. Okay? So if y'all missed it earlier, the science of the Rubik's Cube is, if people who want to debate with me, I just thought of a new way to see if you're worthy of my space or if I'm worthy of your space. If you can, I keep a put together Rubik's Cube in front of you, and if you can do what I did in 67 moves, if you can match all sides and fix the Rubik and do the Rubik's Cube, complete the Rubik's Cube in 67 moves or under, right in front of me, then I'll grant you time or the luxury to be in my space. Welcome to Soul Future. I am APEXX Polaris.